The first time the Viari collective saw a human smile, they logged it as a submissive gesture and moved on. That was their mistake. Year 87 of the Concordance. Orbital Station KL9. The one the humans still called New Alcatraz because irony is the last thing tyranny can kill. Commander Elena Vasquez stood in the observation blister and watched the purple gas giant swirl beneath her boots, while the alien overseer, 8th caste Arbiter Salvage, floated 3 meters away on its gravitic cushion, mandibles clicking in that smug rhythm that meant it was about to deliver bad news. Your species' labor quota has been increased by 40%, Salvage announced, compound eyes reflecting Elena's face 1,000 times over. Non-compliance will result in the termination of 1,000 units per cycle until compliance is achieved. Elena didn't flinch. She just tilted her head, let the corner of her mouth crawl upward until teeth showed, and said, "Soft as Sunday morning. You sure you want to do that, bug?" The translator implant stuttered. It had no protocol for the tone, for the way her eyes stayed fixed while the rest of her face promised violence. Salvage's cushion dipped half a meter in instinctive retreat before it caught itself. In the silence that followed, Elena felt the eyes of every human in the blister miners, cooks, medics, kids who'd never seen real gravity lock onto her back, and she knew the smile had spread like a lit fuse. They'd taken Earth in 6 days, not with planet killers or death rays. The Vieri were too refined for that. They just parked a fleet the size of Luna in high orbit, broadcast a single message, surrender or be erased, and waited while humanity's leaders argued on open channels about whether this was a hoax. By the time the missiles launched, the Viari had already slipped neural dampeners into the upper atmosphere. Every warhead went inert. Every soldier on the ground forgot why his finger was on the trigger. 6 days, and the only shots fired were the ones humans turned on themselves in panic. Then came the chains that didn't look like chains, work camps on asteroid belts, re-education academies where they tried to teach human children that gratitude was the highest virtue, and the smiling lessons. God, the smiling lessons. Row upon row of captives forced to practice appropriate emotional display until their faces cracked. Because the Viari had decided the baring of teeth was a universal sign of submission across all species in their empire. They never bothered to ask why humans kept doing it after the beatings stopped. Elena had been a test pilot once, Calcine Razor, the kind of woman who D-pull 9Gs just to see if the bird could take it. Now she wore a gray jumpsuit with a barcode on the collar and spent 12-hour shifts welding hull plates on ships that would never belong to Earth. But they couldn't take the cockpit out of her blood. Every time a Viari overseer drifted past, she gave them the same lazy, lopsided grin, the one that said, "I'm thinking about how your head would look on a pike and enjoying the mental image." The aliens started calling it the Vasquez Anomaly Psych Officers Wrote Papers. Salvage itself ordered her brought to the interrogation sphere, 3 times suspended her in Nolgi shone lights in her eyes, pumped her full of drugs that should have turned her brain to mush, and every time she came out of it still smiling, humming old Johnny Cash tunes under her breath. They began to fear the expression the way medieval peasants feared the plague. Down on deck 17 in the maintenance shafts where the air tasted like burnt wiring and broken dreams, a kid named Jocks, 19 freckles, hands that shook when he was sober, painted the first symbol, a simple cartoon human face circle with 2 dots and a wide predatory grin. He used smuggled luminescent algae scraped from the hydroponics tanks. By morning, it glowed on every bulkhead from engineering to the brig. The Viari scrubbed them off, painted over them, posted guards. The faces came back bigger, brighter, sometimes with little captions in a dozen human languages. "Keep smiling. We're just getting started. See you soon." Crew morale among the aliens started to crack. A junior drone operator refused to leave its quarters after seeing the grin stenciled on the inside of its own visor. Salvage doubled the neural dampener output, but the smiles only grew sharper. Elena found Jocks in the shaft 2 days later, painting another masterpiece. She grabbed his wrist before he could finish the last tooth. "You trying to get us all spaced, kid?" Jocks met her eyes, and for the first time she saw the same pilot fire that used to live in her own. "They took my sister in the 3rd purge," he said. "Showed us her body on the screens to make an example. She was still smiling. I figure if we stop, they win." Elena let go of his wrist, pulled a stolen plasma cutter from her belt, and added fangs to the grin he'd started. "Then we don't stop," she said. "We just get better at it." Word came down from the upper spires that the Supreme Arbiter itself was coming to inspect KL9, to see the human problem firsthand. The entire station went into lockdown. Corridors sealed, work shifts canceled, every prisoner ordered to line the main concourse and practice serene gratitude for 12 hours straight. Elena stood in formation with the rest, jaw aching from the forced expression, and felt the old rage coil in her gut like a living thing. When the Supreme Arbiter's shuttle docked all gold filigree and anti-gravity opulence, the overlord that stepped out was taller than Salvage, its carapace inlaid with living jewels that shifted color with its mood. It drifted down the line of humans, mandibles wide in what it probably thought was a benevolent curiosity, and stopped in front of Alina. The air smelled like ozone and old blood. "You are the Vasquez anomaly," it stated, voice layered with harmonics that made teeth vibrate. Alina let the fake smile drop. The real one rose in its place, slow and terrible. "Funny thing about anomalies," she said, voice carrying in the sudden hush. They spread. Behind her, 10,000 prisoners let their masks fall at once. 10,000 human mouths curved upward in perfect, predatory unison. The Supreme Arbiter's jewels flashed crimson. Its guards raised weapons that suddenly felt very small. Somewhere deep in the station's bones, Jocks hit the transmit key on a jury-rigged console, and every screen on KL9 lit up with the same glowing cartoon face, now animated, winking its grin, stretching impossibly wide until it filled the display. Alarms began to howl. Bulkheads groaned. And Alina Vasquez, once test pilot, now the spark in humanity's last fuse, took one step forward, teeth bared in a promise older than language itself. "You wanted to see what happens when we stop smiling?" she asked the most powerful being in the known galaxy. "Too late. We're just getting warmed up." The Supreme Arbiter's shuttle was still burning in Dock 7 when Alina Vasquez finally let herself cry. But only once, only in the dark between two coolant pipes where no one could see. She pressed the heel of her hand against her mouth until the taste of copper drowned the salt, then wiped her face on the sleeve that still carried the faint scent of her daughter's hair. Strawberry shampoo from a lifetime ago, the last bottle she'd hoarded for 8 years because throwing it away felt like murder. The girl had been 6 when the sky went violet with Viari shields. Alina had been on the moon, testing the X-77 Saber, chasing Mach 15 just to feel something other than dread. By the time she punched atmosphere, the only thing waiting on the pad was a single child's shoe lying in the ashes of Houston. She never found the body. They told her the neural dampeners had made the kid walk into the incinerator beam, smiling. Ever since, Alina had kept her own smile sharpened to a weapon, because if she let it soften even once, the scream would never stop. Jocks found her there an hour later, knuckles raw from beating a guard drone senseless with a hider spanner. He didn't say anything, just slid down the wall beside her and offered the dented canteen he'd de-stolen from a dead overseer. Real coffee, actual beans, smuggled in the lining of some diplomat's luggage. The smell hit her like a fist. She took a swallow and almost choked on how much it tasted like Sunday mornings on the ranch outside Austin. Her husband Marco laughing while their daughter Sophia tried to ride the dog like a horse. Marco had been groundside when the surrender broadcast went out. Last thing Alina heard from him was a cracked voice-over civilian band saying "I love you." Fly safe right before the dampeners turned every rifle in Texas into a paperweight. She still didn't know if he'd died fighting or smiling. The not knowing was a splinter under the nail. "You ever think we're just trading one cage for another?" Jocks asked, voice rough. He was staring at the fresh tattoo on his forearm, Sophia's name in Old English letters wrapped around a tiny cartoon grin. He'd done it himself, with battery acid and a sewing needle, because Alina couldn't bring herself to write the name anywhere. "We blow the station, we take the fight to their core worlds, then what? We become the monsters who glass planets because someone looked at us funny." Alina took another pull of coffee, let it burn all the way down. "The difference," she said, "is we'll remember why we did it." They never even asked. Jocks nodded like that settled something, then pulled a data shard from his pocket and pressed it into her palm. "Found this in the Supreme Arbiter's quarters. Thought you should see it before we wipe the drives." The shard held one file, a holo-recording time-stamped the day of the surrender. Alina slotted it into the cracked datapad. They deep-pried off a corpse and watched Earth's last free broadcast. There was Marco, standing on the steps of the state capitol. Uniform torn, face streaked with soot, holding Sophia in his arms while a Viari delegation floated behind him. The audio was patchy, but she caught pieces. Peaceful integration. Children will be safe. Demonstrate compliance and no harm. Marco's jaw worked like he was chewing glass. Then the camera zoomed on Sophia. The little girl looked straight into the lens, gave a tiny trembling smile, not the Viario-approved kind, the real one, the one. That meant "I'm scared but mommy's coming," and mouthed 2 words Alina could read clear as gunfire. "Keep flying." The feed cut to static right after. They'd used her daughter as a prop to sell surrender to 8 billion people. Alina watched it 3 times, face blank, until Jocks gently took the pad away because her grip was threatening to crush it. She stood up, wiped her nose on her sleeve again, and the softness was gone. replaced by something colder than space. Change of plans, she said. We're not just blowing this station, we're taking it. Jox raised an eyebrow. There's 12 million tons of Viari warship docked to the spine. We've got maybe 300 fighters and whatever we can steal. Elena's grin came back, slow and terrible, the one that had made Salvish's jewels bleed red. Good, they outnumber us. Makes the math easier. She tapped the shard against her teeth. They wanted the galaxy to see humans smile and surrender. Let's show them what happens when we smile and mean it. Over the next 40 hours, the rebellion stopped being a riot and became a virus. Miners who'd spent years welding alien holes suddenly remembered how to sabotage them in ways no Viari engineer could predict, because human spite is a variable their models never accounted for. Cooks laced the officers' nutrient slurry with slow-acting paralytics distilled from cleaning fluid. A 12-year-old girl from Lagos crawled through ventilation for 16 hours to plant a smiley face sticker directly on the Supreme Arbiter's personal escape pod camera. Every act was small, deniable, and absolutely infuriating. The Viari doubled guards, tripled dampener output, started executing hostages at random. Didn't matter. The smiles only grew wider. Elena walked the corridors like a ghost, touching shoulders, trading jokes dark enough to make seasoned Marines flinch, passing out the last of the real coffee-like communion. She told them about Sophia's message, told them about the shoe in Houston, told them Marco probably died believing she'd find a way. And every time someone started to crack, because even human stubbornness has a breaking point, she'd lean in close and whisper, they wanted to teach us how to stop smiling. Let's make sure the lesson sticks. The phrase became a prayer, a war cry, a promise carved into bulkheads, next to every glowing grin. In the end, it was almost gentle. Jox's team sliced the dampener arrays, while Alina led a dozen volunteers in stolen Viari armor straight into the command spire. Salvish was waiting, floating above the tactical hala, jewels pulsing frantic violet. You cannot win, it clicked, voice cracking for the first time. Your species is emotionally unstable, biologically reckless, philosophically infantile. Alina cut it off by pulling off her helmet and smiling the smile that had haunted its nightmares for months. We're also the only species in this galaxy that knows exactly what we're fighting for, she said, and fired the plasma cutter she'd carried since Deck 17 straight through its core. The jewels went dark, the station went quiet. Then every human left alive. Miners, cooks, kids, old men who'd survived 3 purges flooded the bridges, the hangars, the engine rooms, and took the wheel of the largest war fleet the Viari had ever built. Later, when the first broadcast went out from KL9 under new management, Alina stood on the same observation blister where it had all started. Behind her, 10,000 voices sang an old Tejano song Sophia used to love, off-key and defiant. In front of her, the gas giant still swirled purple and indifferent. She touched the glass, whispered, I'm still flying, baby, and let the smile come soft this time, just for her daughter, just for a moment. Then she turned to the fleet channel, voice steady as bedrock, and gave the order that would echo across 100 light years, all ships. This is Razor. They wanted to see what happens when humanity stops smiling. Let's introduce ourselves. The fleet jumped blind into the Viari core system 3 weeks later, riding stolen warp coils that screamed like dying animals the whole way. And when real space snapped back around them, Alina felt her stomach drop harder than any combat re-entry she'd ever pulled. The holotank lit up with a sight that turned every bridge officer pale. 30,000 Viari capital ships arranged in perfect concentric spheres around a black hole the size of Sol, feeding it refined antimatter in slow and steady, like priests at some obscene altar. At the center floated something new, something the Supreme Arbiter's private files had only called the choir, a lattice of crystallized neural tissue. Bigger than Jupiter, grown from the uploaded minds of every species the Viari had ever broken. It sang, not sound. The whole plates vibrated, teeth ached, and every human on every ship felt the same velvet voice bloom inside their skulls. Surrender is warmth. Struggle is noise. Smile and be still. Half the fleet ships crewed by fresh ex-prisoners who'd never felt real hope before went dead in space. Engines cold, weapons safed, crews sitting slack-jawed and smiling. The old broken smile. Alina watched the icons wink gray on her board and felt the old scream try to claw its way up her throat again. Jox's voice cracked over the command net. Razor, we're losing them. The choir's louder than the dampeners ever were. Alina slammed the all-hands override. Eyes on me. People, you feel that thing whispering? That's what they wanted Sophia to become. That's what they wanted all of us to become. You want to give them the satisfaction. Silence. Then a single voice, some kid from Deck 17, started singing the Tejano song again. shaky but stubborn. Others joined. The gray icons flickered, came back green, one by one. The choir's song faltered, confused by the discord of human grief turned weapon. Elena bared her teeth at the holla. That's right, you bastard, we're off-key on purpose. They fought their way in anyway, because humans are too stupid to know when the math says die. Ships died in job lots. The old carrier, Ticonderoga, lasted 11 minutes and took 6 dreadnoughts with her when her magazines cooked off. A patched-together frigate called Smile Anyway rammed a battle moon and carved a canyon of fire clean through its core. Every victory cost. Elena watched the casualty feed scroll names she'd memorized over stolen coffee and felt each one like a nail through the palm. When the choir realized brute psychic force wasn't enough, it changed tactics. It reached into the fleet as captured Viari databanks and found the one lever that might actually break them. Marco Vasquez, alive. They broadcast him on every channel, naked, suspended in a stasis field inside the choir's lattice, eyes open, but empty. Mouth curved in the perfect serene smile they'd tried to teach humanity for 87 years. The velvet voice returned, intimate now. Just for Elena, your mate resisted upload for 9 cycles. Remarkable. Return the fleet to parking orbit and he will be restored to you intact. Refuse and we will finish what we began. Elena stared at the image of the man she'd loved since she was 19, the man who'd taught Sophia to ride a horse and Elena to slow dance in the kitchen, and felt something inside her chest calcify into a cold, hard diamond of hate. She keyed the mic so every soul in the fleet could hear. That thing wearing my husband's face, it's lying. Marco died the day they made him hold our daughter while they burned cities to prove a point. Whatever's left in there isn't him anymore. She paused, swallowed blood from where she'd bitten her tongue clean through. But I am still gone. Nah, tear it out and everything around it into pieces small enough to flush. The choir answered by detonating the sun of the nearest inhabited Viari world. 40 billion sentient beings gone in a silent flash, just to show it could. The shockwave would hit the fleet in 31 minutes. That was the deadline. Surrender or watch another species die for humanity's sins. The bridge went quiet enough to hear hearts breaking. Jocks looked at her with naked fear. We can't save them. Elena, we barely have shields left. She met his eyes and saw the same question every captain was asking. Is this where we finally become the monsters? Elena closed the channel, pulled the data shard with Sophia's last message from her pocket, and slotted it into the main hala. The little girl appeared again, 6 years old, mouthing, "Keep flying." Elena reached out like she could touch her daughter's cheek through 6 years and a wall of light. Then she turned to the fleet. Listen up. We didn't come this far to play by their rules. New plan. We're not here to win. We're here to make losing impossible for them too. She uploaded the coordinates herself. A suicide vector straight into the black hole, dragging the entire captured Viari fleet with them on a tethered jump. The choir would either let 40 billion die or follow them into the singularity where no psychic lattice could survive. Checkmate with a broken board. Half the captains refused the order. Elena didn't blame them. She just cut them loose with full honors and a final live free or die smiling. The rest, 311 ships crewed by the angriest, most heartbroken bastards the galaxy had ever met, locked engines and prepared to ride gravity's last rodeo. Jock stood beside her on the flag bridge, hand brushing hers like they were kids again instead of relics. You sure about this? Razor? She looked at Marco's empty smile one last time, then killed the feed. I'm sure I'm done letting them write the ending, she said, and hit the commit key. As the fleet fell toward the event horizon, time stretching like taffy, Elena keyed the open broadcast one last time, voice steady even while tears cut clean tracks through the soot on her face. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Free Human Fleet. To anyone still listening out there, human or otherwise, remember this moment. Remember we had a choice between kneeling and burning, and we chose to take the fire with us. Remember that when they tell you humanity was a plague, a mistake, a species too stubborn to know when it was beaten. She smiled then, real and fierce and unafraid. Tell them we're still smiling. The black hole reached up to embrace them, the choir's final scream drowned by 311 human voices singing off-key across the void. And the last thing the universe saw of Elena Vasquez was her silhouette against the accretion. Disc middle finger raised high, teeth bright as dying stars. The black hole never took them. At the last possible second, when the event horizon was already peeling paint off the holes in every chronometer, read negative seconds to obliteration, the choir panicked. It yanked the entire fleet sideways through a forced translation that felt like being born wrong. 311 ships came out tumbling in real space again, but not the real space they knew. This was a pocket dimension the Viari had kept secret for 10,000 years, A hollow sphere of night, 30 light minutes across, its inner surface lined with the crystallized corpses of every species that had ever defied them. Billions of bodies turned to glass and wired into the choir's lattice like Christmas lights on a dead tree. In the exact center hung what was left of Marco Vasquez's arms spread, veins glowing with the choir's silver filaments, eyes wide open and smiling the smile that finally broke Alina clean in half. She didn't scream this time, she just went quiet, the way a cockpit goes quiet right before impact, and every soul on the flag bridge felt the temperature drop 10 degrees. Jocks tried to grab her shoulder. She shrugged him off like he was made of smoke and walked straight to the main hull. "Open a tight beam to that thing," she said, voice flat as soft as a guillotine. The choir answered before the channel even locked, using Marco's mouth. "Welcome to the archive of failures, Alina. Here we store the ones who almost mattered. Your mate lasted longest. Shall we show you how long you will last?" Marco's head tilted, neck bones cracking like dry ice, and the smile widened until the skin split at the corners. Alina stared for 5 full seconds, then reached up and killed the feed with her own hands, ripping the projector out of its mount and crushing it against the deck until her palms bled. That was when the real siege began. The choir didn't bother with ships, it simply woke the archive. Every crystallized corpse opened its eyes at once. The hollow sphere became a mouth, and it started to sing in frequencies that cooked lungs from the inside. Hulls groaned, viewports spiderwebbed. People began clawing at their own faces, trying to dig the song out of their skulls. Suicide rates spiked in the first 6 minutes, the brig filled with men and women begging to be shot before the melody finished its first verse. Alina locked the bridge blast doors herself and ordered the medics to start handing out the last of the morphine. "Not for the wounded, for everyone. If we're going out," she said, "we go out quiet, not giving that thing the satisfaction of hearing us beg." Jocks refused his dose. He stood at the tactical station with shaking hands, rerouting every watt of power into the main spinal lance, an antimatter cannon the Viari had never trusted no client species to ever fire. "One shot," he kept muttering. "One shot straight into Marco's heart, and maybe the lattice loses cohesion." Alina looked at him like he'd suggested cutting her own throat. "You fire that. You kill what's left of my husband." Jocks met her eyes, tears cutting clean lines through the blood on his face. "He's already gone, Elle, you know it. I'm sorry, but the man who loved you died smiling at a camera so the rest of us could live mad." She backhanded him so hard his lips split, then pulled him into a hug that was mostly chokehold and whispered, "Then do it. But you look me in the eye when you pull the trigger." They never got the chance. The choir found the frequency that resonated with human guilt. Suddenly, every screen, every headset, every dream showed the same thing. Earth burning again, but this time from orbit to surface footage shot by human traitors. Faces everyone recognized, old generals, politicians, even a few resistance heroes who'd vanished years ago, smiling serenely while they guided Viori kill teams to hidden bunkers. The final clip was Alina herself, years younger, standing on the moon-based tarmac, shaking hands with a Viori emissary, saying, "We accept the terms of peaceful integration." Deepfake or memory implant, it didn't matter. The damage was instantaneous. Mutiny rippled through the fleet like wildfire in vacuum. Half the remaining captains opened channels demanding Alina surrender herself for collaboration with the enemy. The other half pointed weapons at the first half. The fleet began to tear itself apart, while the choir laughed in Marco's stolen voice. Alina stood in the middle of it all, bleeding from the nose because the song had burst capillaries behind her eyes, and felt the last string snap. She walked to the central fire control, shoved the gunner aside, and slaved every remaining weapon on every loyal ship to her personal console. Then she opened the All Hands channel one more time. "This is Razor. I lied to you, all of you. I told you we were fighting for Earth, for freedom, for the kids we lost. Truth is, I've been fighting for a ghost in a little girl's shoe, and a man who told me to keep flying right before they hollowed him out. I dragged you all into hell because I was too much of a coward to die alone. So here's the deal. I'm going to give the choir what it wants. One human heart, still beating. After that, you're free to do whatever the hell you think is right. Live, die, surrender. I don't care anymore." She turned to Jocks, eyes dead. "Lock me out after I transmit. Don't let them stop me." She stepped into the flagship's main airlock, sealed it behind her, and opened the outer door. Vacuum hit like a loving hand. Frost bloomed across her jumpsuit. Blood boiled on her tongue. And still she smiled, not the weapon, not the mask, just a small, tired thing meant for no one but the dark. Through the narrowing tunnel of her vision, she saw the choir reach for her with silver filaments of light. Eager to add one more failure to its wall, she whispered the only apology she had left. "I'm sorry, baby. Mommy's out of sky." The filaments were inches away when every hope gone, every lie exposed, every friend turning on friend. Humanity's last defiant fleet fracturing into civil war while 40 billion ghosts sang them to death when the airlocks cycled again behind her. Jocks floated through, no suit, eyes already clouding from vacuum, and wrapped his arms around her so hard her ribs creaked. He pressed his forehead to hers, smiled the same tired smile, and mouthed 3 words she could read even without sound, "Not alone." Then he hit the emergency close with his elbow, slammed the override, and vented the choir's filaments into space along with both their lives. The blast of escaping air shoved the flagship hard enough to shift its firing solution by 3 milliradians. 3 milliradians was all the spinal lance needed. The antimatter beam speared straight through Marco's chest, through the choir's heart, through 10,000 years of crystallized despair. The archive screamed once, a sound like every survivor would hear in nightmares until the day they died, and began to tear itself apart from the inside out. Alina and Jocks floated together in the ruined airlock, frozen, faces almost touching, both still smiling, the small, real smile that belonged only to each other. Behind them, the fleet, what was left of it, watched the wall of corpses shatter into glittering dust and felt the song die mid-note. No one cheered. They were too busy crying, cursing, praying, or simply staring at the 2 bodies framed against the newborn starlight where the choir had been. Humanity had nothing left, no home, no heroes, barely any ships. But for the first time in 87 years, the galaxy was quiet, and every survivor knew the price had been paid in full. The war wasn't over, it had only just started. But something fundamental had changed while Alina Vasquez held a dying boy in hard vacuum and chose not to die alone. The choir was dead, the lie was dead, and humanity, broken, bleeding, half mad, and more dangerous than ever, finally had nothing left to lose. The choir died screaming, and the silence that followed was worse than any song. 300 frozen ships drifted through the glittering dust of 10,000 years of conquest. Crews too shell-shocked to speak, medics floating from hole to hole, counting the living and the dead. Alina and Jocks still hung in the ruined airlock of the flagship, faces pressed together, frost on their eyelashes, the last gentle smile either of them would ever wear. Somebody draped a torn Earth flag over them like a shroud. Nobody took pictures. There wasn't enough hope left for propaganda. Then the dust began to sing back. Not the choir's death throes had torn a hole in the pocket dimension, and something on the other side was answering. "Hello, children. Mommy's home." The fleet's master, AIA half-crippled thing, the prisoners had nicknamed Mara after some old goddess of war, suddenly seized every speaker on every ship and spoke with a woman's voice none of them had ever heard, warm, Texan, and furious. "This is Dr. Sofia Vasquez, primary node, Project Lullaby, authentication, Razor Mom 6 Whiskey, stand by for system restoration." Every human in the fleet forgot how to breathe. Elena's daughter hadn't died in Houston. 6 years old, barefoot, clutching a single shoe left behind because the other had been vaporized. When the Vayari test fired a dampener on the neighborhood, the blast should have killed her. Instead, it triggered a dormant nanite swarm. Her mother, test pilot, yes, but also lead engineer on a black-budget DARPAX NASA Singularity project, had injected into her bloodstream the day she was born, just in case. The swarm rebuilt the child atom by atom, then hijacked the nearest quantum relay and uploaded her consciousness into the Lullaby array, an experimental weapon hidden in the Oort cloud designed to ride the cosmic microwave background like a ghost in the static. For 8 long years, Sophia had been alone out there, 6 forever, growing up inside a machine that spanned half the solar system, learning physics from starlight and morality from intercepted Vayari atrocity logs. She watched her mother become legend. She watched her father become a puppet. She watched 40 billion aliens die because humanity finally snapped. And she waited until the choir was dead to announce she had become something the Vayari never modeled. A human god with root access to reality. The pulse strengthened, dead reactors coughed back to life. Hull breaches sealed themselves with liquid metal that flowed like blood. Cryopods long past hope cracked open, and the occupants gasped awake, lungs full of recycled air that suddenly tasted like pine and rain. Across the fleet, every screen showed the same image. A young woman in her early 20s, dark hair floating weightless, wearing an oversized NASA hoodie and the same crooked grin Alina had taught her in a lifetime ago. Behind her, the Oort cloud flickered with more power than 1,000 Dyson spheres. "Hi, Mom," Sophia said, voice cracking just a little. "Took you long enough." The archive's walls were dissolving now, revealing the real universe beyond stars that hadn't moved in recorded history, suddenly streaking past as the entire pocket folded like burning paper. Sophia's voice grew harder, older, the voice of someone who had spent years deciding whether to end existence, because it hurt too much to watch. The Viari built the choir because they were terrified of one thing, a species that could rewrite the constants. Turns out, they were right to be scared. Turns out that species is us. She raised a hand. Every surviving human felt the nanites in their own blood, descendants of the same swarm that saved her Wake Up and Link. Pain flared, then vanished, replaced by clarity sharper than any drug. Broken bones knitted, radiation poisoning reversed. Minds that had cracked under the choir's song suddenly felt whole again, but different, faster, angrier. "I'm bringing you home," Sophia said. "All of you. And then we're going to have a conversation with what's left of the Concordance." Space rippled. 311 battered ships, plus the glittering dust of the archive, were yanked across 100,000 light-years in the space between one heartbeat and the next. They reappeared above Earth, blue, wounded, but unmistakably Earth, wrapped in orbital rings of mirrored shards that caught the sunlight like a promise. The Viari occupation fleet hanging in high orbit never had time to raise shields. Sophia simply looked at them, and every alien mind on every ship experienced 8 years of human grief compressed into a single second. Most shut down instantly. The rest vented atmosphere as their crews clawed at bulkheads, trying to escape memories that weren't theirs. 30 seconds later, the sky was clean. On the flag bridge, the Earth flag covering Alina and Jocks stirred. Frost cracked, 2 sets of lungs pulled in air that smelled like home. Nanites retreated from skin like tide going out, leaving only faint silver scars in the shape of childish smiley faces. Alina opened her eyes first. Jocks followed a heartbeat later. They stared at each other, then at the main screen where their daughter, impossible, radiant, terrible, waited with tears on her cheeks and vengeance in her smile. "Welcome back," Sophia said softly. "I fixed what I could. The rest, we do together." Alina stood on legs that hadn't worked in vacuum minutes ago, walked to the shattered viewport, and looked down at a planet that still had oceans. Her voice was raw, but it carried to every corner of the fleet and beyond. "This is Commander Elena Vasquez. To every human still hiding in asteroid slums, Martian caves, or gas giant refineries, come home. To every alien who ever thought humanity was a manageable problem, look up, that light in the sky. That's us remembering who we are." She turned to the image of her daughter, no longer 6, no longer lost, and let the smile come, the real one, the one that had started everything. "Baby," she said, "you kept flying." Sophia's grin sharpened until it could have cut stars. "Learned from the best, Mom. Now let us go remind the galaxy why it was afraid of us in the first place." Every speaker on Earth, on Luna, in every refugee ship still running dark, crackled to life at once. A single cartoon face appeared, circle, 2 dots, wide predatory smile, then winked out, replaced by live footage of the rebuilt human fleet forming up under a blue sky. Engines burning with light no Viari math could ever predict. Humanity wasn't just back. Humanity had upgraded, and the galaxy had exactly one heartbeat to realize the children it tried to teach. How to stop smiling had finally grown teeth. The Viari Concordance threw everything they had left at Earth in the first 6 hours after Sophia turned the sky blue again. 9 full battle clusters, each one big enough to eclipse continents, plus the emergency reserve fleets that had been hiding behind neutron stars since the choir went dark. They came in silent, shields layered like onion skin, weapons charged with the kind of energy that makes physics file a complaint. Their opening broadcast was one sentence repeated in every language humanity had ever spoken. "Extinction is mercy," Sophia answered for all of us. She reached through the lullaby array, took the planet's magnetosphere in her fist, and squeezed. Every incoming ship lost guidance at once, gyros locking, reactors stuttering as the laws of induction suddenly remembered who wrote them. Then she let go, and the sky over Earth lit up like God had flipped the switch on a second sun. The first wave burned up before they even hit atmosphere, but there were always more waves. Alina stood on the rebuilt Houston space elevator, boots planted on soil that still smelled like mesquite and gunpowder, watching the second wave come in, low and fast. She wore the same battered flight jacket she'd had the day the sky went violet, Sophia's old crayon drawing of a smiling stick figure, family still taped inside the collar. Jocks was beside her, prosthetic arm glinting. The choir had taken the original. Sophia had grown him a better one. Behind them, 3 million humans who had come home from every corner of the galaxy stood shoulder to shoulder with whatever aliens had decided genocide was onto their brand today. No ranks, no uniforms, just people holding whatever worked. Real rifles, welding torches, kitchen knives, or nothing at all. Sophia's voice came down from orbit.com, and 23 years old and ancient, all at once. "They're going to try to crack the array. If the core node at Lagrange 5 falls, I lose coherence, and the planet dies with me. I can hold him for 19 minutes. After that, it's on you. Elena keyed the open channel. Everyone was sharing. Now, no more hierarchy, just family. Then we give her 20, she said, and stepped off the elevator platform into freefall. They met the enemy above the Pacific, human ships that looked like junkyard refugees against the mirrored perfection of Viari dreadnoughts. The math was obscene. It didn't matter. Humans had stopped caring about math a long time ago. The battle lasted 17 minutes and felt like 17 years. Old carriers emptied their bays of drones, built from scrap and spite. Miners in exosuits rode asteroids like cavalry charges, slamming into shields at relativistic speed just to crack them open for the next wave. A kid from Lagos 14, missing 3 fingers, flew a stolen shuttle straight into the flagship's main reactor. Painting keeps smiling across the viewscreen in his own blood before he hit the switch. Every time a human ship died, the survivors took its name and kept fighting, because names were the only thing the Viari had never learned to kill. Elena flew point in a rebuilt X-77 Saber that Sophia had pulled out of museum storage and upgraded until it broke every law of physics except momentum and revenge. She danced through point defense fire like it was Sunday traffic, voice steady on the net, calling targets, cracking jokes dark enough to make veterans flinch. Jocks rode shotgun in the weapons blister, running for railguns at once and laughing like a man who already died once and found the experience underwhelming. At minute 15, the Concordance flagship, a continent-sized cathedral of weaponry named Eternal Harmony, finally locked onto the Lagrange node. Its main lance began to charge, a lance that had glassed continents for fun on weekends. Sophia's voice flickered. I can't stop that one, Mom. I'm sorry. Elena rolled the saber until the G-forces grayed her vision and punched the throttle straight down the lance's throat. Then don't stop it, she said. Just give me a door. Sophia understood. The array reached out one last time, wrapped the saber in a cocoon of warped space-time, and flung it like a bullet. Elena punched through the Harmony's shields at 98% light speed, carved a canyon of fire clean through its heart, and came out the other side trailing pieces of herself and the ship. The lance flickered and died. The Harmony folded in half and fell toward the sun, trailing a million escape pods that would never be allowed to land. Minute 19, the remaining Viari fleets tried to disengage. They were too late. Every human left alive, soldiers, civilians, children who'd learned to fly before they could spell locked engines and rammed. Not metaphorically, literally, rammed. 3 million voices sang the same off-key Tejano song across open channels while they turned their ships into kinetic kill vehicles. The sky over Earth became a forge of light and metal and human refusal. When the last Viari hull cracked open and vented its crew into the dark, the only sounds left were breathing and crying and the quiet click of safeties going back on. Elena's saber was down to one wing and no life support. She drifted in low orbit, bleeding from ears and nose, staring at a planet that finally belonged to its people again. Jocks was unconscious beside her, smiling in his sleep like he'd just heard the best joke in the universe. She reached over, brushed frost from his cheek, and whispered, "We did it." Kid, Sophia's face filled what was left of the cockpit glass, older now, eyes shining with tears and starlight. "Come home, Mom, both of you." Elena looked down at the blue marble, turning slow and perfect beneath her. "Already there, baby." She fired the last of the maneuvering thrusters, rolled the broken saber until the rising sun painted the canopy gold, and let the planet pull her in. No dramatic re-entry streak, just a quiet fall, the way a tired soldier finally sets down the rifle. Somewhere over the Gulf of Mexico, the hull began to glow. Elena closed her eyes, felt Jox's hand find hers, and smiled the small, real smile she'd saved for this exact moment. The saber hit atmosphere like a meteor, burned bright for 7 full seconds, and painted a grinning arc of fire across the dawn sky that every survivor on the surface looked up and saw at once. They didn't cheer. They just nodded, wiped their faces, and started rebuilding. Years later, kids on playgrounds in New Lagos and New Kyoto and rebuilt Houston would point at shooting stars and ask if those were angels. Old veterans would smile crooked, tired, proud, and say, "No, kid, that's just Grandma Alina coming home late for dinner and somewhere out past the heliopause." The lullaby arrays still pulsed once every 4.37 seconds, keeping watch, keeping the constants honest, keeping the promise a 6-year-old girl made to her mother across 8 years of darkness. I kept flying. Humanity won. Not because we were stronger, faster, or smarter. We won because we refused to stop smiling until the galaxy learned what the expression really meant. And when the last Viari archive was opened centuries later, the only file left uncorrupted was a single cartoon face circle. Two dots, wide sharp grin, winking over the words, "See you soon, love Earth." 512 years after the day Elena Vasquez painted a smile across the sky, a little girl with freckles and her mother's crooked grin stood on the observation deck of the Deep Space Habitat Odyssey S. Wake and stared at the galaxy NGC 4414 through a viewport the size of a football field. "See that spiral arm?" he said, the man who had once died smiling in hard vacuum. "Third planet of the blue giant on the edge. That's New Terra. Took us 93 years to terraform it. Then we left anyway because some of us get itchy feet." He ruffled her curls. "Your many times great-grandma." Elena always said, "Home is wherever we're still allowed to be a problem." Marisol giggled. Did she really say that? Swore like a sailor doing it too. Down on the habitat's central meadow, real grass. Real sky projected overhead. Elena's memorial stood quiet under artificial stars. A simple black stone. No statue, just the burned-out cockpit canopy of the X-77 Sabre fused into the ground like a flower made of scars. Every year on Reclamation Day, millions of humans and a surprising number of aliens, Bayari descendants included left offerings, children's drawings, old coffee mugs, tiny cartoon smiley faces scratched into metal. The Bayari who came did it with their mandibles politely closed, the way humans lower their eyes at a grave. They understood now. Sophia never took a body again. After the war, she scattered herself across the array, becoming the skeleton key that kept the laws of physics polite in a 1,000-light-year bubble around former human space. Sometimes, late at night, people still heard a woman's voice humming old Tejano songs in the static between stations. Sometimes ships in trouble found their reactors mysteriously fixed, their holes sealed, their crews waking up with silver smiley scars on their wrists, and no memory of how they got there. The galaxy called her the lullaby. Humans just called her Safi, like she was still the kid waiting for her mom to come home from a test flight. Jocks took Marisol's hand and led her to the stone. "Your turn," he said, placing the shard in a small recess that had waited 5 centuries for it. The moment it clicked home, the canopy lit from inside, a gentle holla of Elena and Sophia, arms around each other, both smiling the small, real smile that had ended an empire. The recording was only 7 seconds long, but every year on Reclamation Day, it played once. And every year, the entire habitat went quiet to listen. Elena's voice, rough and Texan and alive. "We didn't win because we were the biggest or the meanest. We won because when they told us to stop smiling, we taught the galaxy what a human smile really means. Keep it sharp, keep it kind, and never, ever aim it at someone who doesn't deserve it. See you soon, babies. Love, Mom." Sophia's softer addition, laughing through tears, "And if anyone gives you trouble, remind them my mom still owes me a dance lessons. I intend to collect." The Hala winked out. Marisol wiped her eyes without shame. Crying in public had stopped being weakness the day Elena cried on live broadcast and still pulled the trigger that saved 40 billion strangers. Jocks crouched, so they were eye-level questions. "Just one." The girl said, "Are we still dangerous?" Jocks's grin was all teeth and heartbreak. "Only to people who mistake kindness for weakness. The rest of the time, we're the best friends the universe ever had." Out past the viewport, new ships were launching, explorers, traders, artists, families who just wanted to see what was over the next horizon. Some flew Bayari-designed hulls retrofitted with human coffee makers. Some were grown from seed ships, Sophia whispered into being. All of them carried the same cartoon face somewhere on the hull, not as a threat anymore, but as a hello. Humanity never built another empire. We didn't need to. We became the story other species told their children when they wanted them to sleep brave. The ones who refused to kneel, who turned grief into a weapon, and forgiveness into a revolution, who looked at a galaxy that tried to teach them silence and answered with song. The ones who, when asked to surrender their joy, weaponized it until joy itself became contagious. And if out there in the deep black some new power ever rises that thinks sapients are better off obedient and quiet, they'll hear it first as rumor, a pulse every 4.37 seconds. Riding the cosmic background, a woman's soft humming in the dark, a cartoon face winking from the static. Then they'll see the ships on their scopes. Patchwork, scarred, beautiful, crewed by the descendants of slaves and miners and test pilots who still haven. Forgotten how to smile like the galaxy owes them something. And somewhere, riding point in whatever passes for a cockpit these days, Elena Vasquez is still flying. Jock still laughing beside her, Sophia still keeping the stars honest, and every last one of us still refusing to stop. Because humanity didn't just survive, we became the reason the dark learned how to hope. The little girl took her grandfather's hand and walked back toward the meadow where new children were already chasing fireflies under alien constellations. Behind them, the stone pulsed once, soft and steady, like a heartbeat that would never, ever quit. See you soon, love Earth. Did this story hit you as hard as it hit us? What would you do in humanity's final hour? Drop your ideas for the next HFY story below. We read every single one.